Just he tried to discuss the concept of poverty line, the first effort made by Dadabhai Nauroji. The poverty line, it is the imaginary line which divides the poor and non-poor. 55% of total population in rural areas coming under the poverty line and 41% of total population coming under the poverty line in urban areas. Namaste my dear students, Shubha Hebba here, Faculty of Commerce, Vidhyaashram of First Grade College, the Temple of Excellence, Mysuru. My dear students, a warm welcome to this session. Yes, the session on the topic of features and problems of Indian economy of pre-reforms Indian economy. Yes, we are in the fourth session of the first chapter. In this session, we are going to discuss about what are the real problems of our country. What are the real detention for economic development of our country? Yes, the poverty, unemployment and income inequalities. Dear students, in this session, we are going to discuss about poverty, meaning of poverty and extension of poverty and what are the different measures of poverty. So, those are all the different important contents pertaining to poverty issues. Once again, a warm welcome to the session. Let us discuss with the content. Yes, let us discuss the contents. That first one, meaning and definitions of poverty. Already you have studied about the concept of poverty in your earlier classes. Then what is the meaning of poverty and what are the different features of poverty and what are the different types of poverty, like that. But here just we are going to discuss about the real meaning of poverty and the definitions given by Planning Commission of India. Okay, and then second one, extent of poverty. Under the extent of poverty, which means yes, there are so many persons has tried to measuring the poverty line on the basis of consumption expenditure, on the basis of income. So we are going to discuss what are the different estimates of poverty and estimated by different persons. For example, estimates of Dhandekar and Rath, estimates of Minhas, estimates of Bardhan. So we are going to discuss different estimations of poverty in this content. And the next one, measures of poverty. How to measure the poverty? Yes, there are so many methods to measuring the poverty issues, income poverty gaps, head count ratio. So we are going to discuss different methods to measuring the poverty. And the next one, trends of poverty. Yes, in this content, just we are going to discuss what are the real trends of poverty in India. Just we are going to discuss with the comparisons of 1970s and 2012 and 2020 datas. Okay, so these are all different content we are going to discuss in this session. Let us discuss about the meaning of poverty. What do you mean by poverty? So, generally we can say the poverty is a position which is not able to get minimum basic necessaries. But it is too difficult though we are getting minimum basic necessaries like food, cloth and shelter. It is not enough to lead our life. That basic necessaries, which means it is not only about food, cloth, shelter, it is also including education, healthcare, infrastructure facilities also. Yes, in this manner, that poverty, which is a situation in which a section of people in a country are unable to get the minimum basic needs. Minimum basic needs, which means not only about food, cloth and shelter, so which are very essential to lead a very common life. Okay, if it is not possible to get, those are all the minimum basic requirements, so those condition is called poverty. Yes, and also we can say, what do you mean by poverty? The poverty also defined as that inability to secure the minimum consumption requirements for life, health and efficiency. So that is considered as poverty. Let us discuss the definitions of poverty. Yes, that Planning Commission, the Indian Planning Commission has defined the poverty line on the basis of nutritional requirements. Yes, that poverty line. Yes, According to the Planning Commission, or the Planning Commission defined the poverty line on the basis of nutritional requirements of 2400 calories per person per day in rural areas. Okay, in rural areas 2400 calories per person per day and 2100 calories per person per day in urban areas. So, if it is not possible to get to 2400 calories per day in rural areas, so those position is called poverty. In urban area, 2100 calories per person per day. Okay, these are all the group of people coming under the poverty line. The poverty line, it is an imaginary line which divide the poors and non-poors. Okay, so that what do you mean by poverty line? According to the Planning Commission, which on the basis of nutritional requirements, okay, that 2400 calories per person per day in rural areas and 2100 calories per person per day in urban areas. So, if there is not possible to get these minimum calories per day per person, so that position is called poverty, or those community coming under the poverty line. Yes, next going to that extent of poverty. Yes, there were no serious efforts to measure the poverty and taken by the government, and there were so many persons just they have tried to measuring the poverty themselves. And yes, during the period of pre-independent, first attempt made by Dadabhai Navroji, and just he tried to discuss the concept of poverty line. The first effort made by Dadabhai Navroji. And there were so many persons had tried to measuring the poverty and poverty line. So here I have listed that first one, estimate of Dhandekar and Rath. Yes, according to this estimate that 50% of total population 50% of total population coming under the poverty line in rural area and the 40% of total population coming under the poverty line in urban area. And these estimates got framework during the period of 1960 to 61. Dr. V.M. Dhandekar and Neelkant Rath has estimated this poverty and 50% of total population coming under the poverty line in rural area and 40% of total population coming under the urban areas. And next one, estimated of P.K. Bardhan. Yes, that P.K. Bardhan estimates also during the period of 1960 to 61 on the basis of consumption expenditure 15 rupees per person per month in rural areas and 18 rupees per person per month in urban areas. Yes, if it is not possible to meet this much rupees per month, so those position is called poverty according to this estimate. And yes, that 55% of total population in rural areas coming under the poverty line and 41% of total population coming under the poverty line in urban areas. Okay, according to P.K. Bardhan estimates. And the next estimates B.S. Minhas. Yes, he has comparing the decade-wise data in 1956 to 57. There were 65% of total population coming under the poverty line and 1967 to 68. So just 55.6% of total population coming under the poverty line. Yes, it was declining. Okay, according to B.S. Minhas estimates. And the last estimate, the Planning Commission estimate, according to the Planning Commission, it has formed three important groups. So one is study groups, in 1962, okay, and second one in 1979 it has formed another one body that is called Task Force force of projection on minimum needs and effective consumption demand. Effective consumption demand. Yes, task force of projection on minimum needs and effective consumption demand. And another important body has framed, that is in 1989, expert groups. Just they have tried to estimate the poverty and poverty line. Okay, so these are all about extent of poverty. Next, move on to measures of poverty. There are so many methods to measuring the poverties. So that is head count ratio, income gap ratio, poverty gap index and squared poverty gap index. Okay, let us discuss one by one. So first one, head count ratio. According to the head count ratio, just measuring the number of poors estimated as just proportions of people below poverty line. Okay, proportions of people below poverty line. So that is considered as head count ratio. And second one, income gap ratio. According to the income gap ratio, that consider that expenditure of poors divided by number of people. The total expenditure of poors divided by number of people who are living under the poverty line, okay, or below poverty line. So that is coming under the income gap ratio. By this formula, we can get the income gap ratios. And next one, that poverty gap index. Poverty gap index, it is a differences between poverty line and average income of all households who are living below the poverty line. So that is called poverty gap. And what is the formula for poverty gap index? That is poverty gap index equals poverty line minus average income of households who are below the poverty line. So that is BPL divided by poverty line into 100. Okay, so this is considered as a poverty gap index. It tells about the severity of that poverty. And the next one, squared poverty gaps. It means that squared proportionate poverty gaps, and which tells about sensitivity to inequality of poverty groups. Okay, so these are all different measures of poverty. By this way, you can measure the number of poor of a country. Yes, trends in poverty in India. Yes, I am taking here that first one 1973-74 data and 2011 and 12 data, and next one fresh data, that is 2020 and 21. Yes, let us discuss about this. In 1973-74, that was 320 millions of people coming under the below poverty line, and which shows about 55% of total population, they were in below poverty line. And the second one, 2011 and 12, there were 270 millions of persons coming under the below poverty line. Check about the 22% of total population, approximately 22% of total population coming under the below poverty line. Next one, 2020 and 21. So 84 millions of person coming under the below poverty line. Yes, and that is a 6%, approximately 6% of total population. Because of that population is increasing, that is why the portions of poor will get declined. So that is 6% of total population coming under the below poverty line. Yes, that according to the Tendulkar committee, which we have to consider this one also, that absolute poverty is increasing. Though we are getting the position in comes down in that poverty, just absolute number of poor in the country is increasing. See here that 20.9% in 2012, but in 2020 20.8%, just quite comes down 20.8%. so it is incidence of poverty has come down, but absolute number of poverty which are measuring on the basis of income, so that is considered as absolute number of poverty, so it is increasing. Okay, so this is should consider we are not in a position. So that data tells about we are coming down in that number of poor because of industrialization, which means establishment of more industries and regular employment opportunities and the multiple opportunities which creates more jobs and of course better standard of living. So these are all which led to result about coming down in the number of poor, but absolute number of poor which is increasing. What it tells, which means that income is not enough to lead the life. What we are gaining the income, it is not enough to lead the life. So that is also considered as the poverty conditions. Yes, my dear students, in this session we have discussed what is the meaning of poverty and what are the estimations of poverty, and also we have discussed how to measure the poverty. There are so many methods to calculating the poverty, calculating the number of poor, and what's the real trends of poverty in India. Yes, I am coming to conclude this session. My dear students, I hope you are able to understand what's the real concept, what's the real objectives of this concept, and I hope you will be able to write the concepts of poverty. My dear students, this is the time to say thanks to you all for joined me in this session, and thank you once again. Keep watching and read regularly. Thank you.